An adventurer is a person who runs errands for a guild that has branches all over the country. Such people live off the money they receive for completing errands and complex tasks. Adventure is a profession that involves killing demons, escorting people, and delivering materials. Some adventurers make a name for themselves by killing some dangerous monster like an evil dragon. Others earn huge amounts of money and become rich when they conquer a dungeon. A lot of people want this kind of life and strive to become better adventurers. The Adventurers Guild is a very busy place where a lot of people are crowded. Aker asked why Lynn was so worried, since they were almost done evaluating their abilities. The girl replied that she couldn't wait to find out what she was capable of. Lynn asked why Ark was looking at her so strangely. The guy replied that he was absolutely sure that Lynn would be fine and that she shouldn't worry. Ark thought Lynn was a very nice girl. They were born together and grew up in the same village. Therefore, they have known each other since childhood and left the village together for joint adventures. Lynn grew up to be a very charming girl who attracted the eyes of men. Aker dreamed that after he became an adventurer and saved up a lot of money, he would definitely buy the ring and make a confession of his feelings in front of Lynn. This was what he wanted most when he decided to become an adventurer. The guild administrator continued to call out to everyone who wanted to join, and finally it was Ark and Lynn's turn. Ark said that they had finally waited and suggested that Lynn go first to check in. Ark explained that if he suddenly had incredible abilities, Lynn would be even more worried. Therefore, she must go first, get rid of her worries, and finally survive this difficult moment. But Lynn admitted that she didn't understand what Ark was talking about at all. But I decided to listen to my friend and went first to register. The assessment for the girl went incredibly well. The receptionist exclaimed that this was the first time she would see such an applicant. After all, Miss Lynn has heroic abilities, and the limit of its levels reaches 80. Lynn also had the skills of holy magic, priest, and goddess's blessing. All the adventurers and other candidates present in the guild would be very surprised. After all, such indicators for a beginner were evidence of the girl's incredible abilities, and this was extremely rare. The entire staff of the Adventurers Guild wished Lynn all the best for her future adventures. Lynn herself was thrilled with her own abilities because she hadn't expected this at all. Lynn thanked the staff of the Adventurers Guild and decided to go to her friend Ark's place. The girl excitedly told the guy that she was very surprised by the results of her assessment. Ark replied that it was just amazing and he was happy for her. Ark said that now everything is clear with Lynn and she will probably become a priestess. Lynn also reminded them that it was now up to them to figure out Ark's abilities. The girl stated that she was absolutely sure that Ark was a swordsman or a holy knight. Ark promised that he would do everything in his power to meet her expectations. At this point, the administrator of the Adventurers Guild invited the next candidate for the aptitude assessment, and Ark said that it was now his turn to show his best. Ark asked to register him as an adventurer and gave his name. The girl replied that there were no problems with this and suggested that the guy hold his hand over a special crystal ball. Ark was sure that everything would be fine, and now he would finally know what he was capable of. At this moment, the other adventurers and applicants were discussing that Ark had come along with that outstanding girl who had registered earlier. Everyone expected Ark to show incredible abilities as well. All this aroused the interest of the crowd, and the chatter grew louder. Ark was actually a little worried and wanted to have at least enough strength to protect his beloved. But his thoughts were interrupted by the administrator of the Adventurers Guild. The girl almost laughed, then apologized and pretended that she was just sneezing from the dust. The girl administrator, restrain your emotions, announced that the Ark level limit is extremely low and it can't go beyond the first level. And the only skill he has is instant death magic. After the Adventurer Guild administrator's words, a loud laugh rang out. Everyone present made fun of Ark's puny abilities. No one had ever heard of adventurers with the ultimate first level. Everyone was also surprised by the strange magic of instant death, which was also unknown to anyone. The bullying continued, and in the end, the adventurers called Ark the weakest magician that could be in the world. Lynn hurried to reassure her childhood friend and offered to go with her. But Ark was extremely upset by this result. He couldn't believe that his abilities were so insignificant. And now, as an adventurer, he's completely useless. Lynn didn't know how to calm her friend down and just sat there in silence. Suddenly, an adventurer approached Lynn and asked if she was the girl everyone was talking about lately. Lin became interested in the spectacular guy and asked who he was. The guy replied that his name was Alan, and he was the leader of the S-rank team. Alan apologized for bothering him and explained that he wanted to invite Lin to join his team. And since her abilities are very good, she will be a priestess and will perfectly complement the team. Lin was impressed by the suggestion and thought it would be very quick. Lin had heard before about Alan's team and how his group of monsters had a high-level limit. Also, this team of adventurers often carried out errands from the king himself. And the most interesting thing is that in his team there were very cute girls. Ark thought that they had just registered, and his childhood friend had already received an invitation to join such a high-level team. So Lin is a gifted person. Lin asked Alan why he had decided to invite her. After all, she's only a level 1 adventurer. Alan replied that he was well aware of Lin's anxiety, but that she needed to worry. Alan promised that if Lin was a member of his team, it would rise to a high level very quickly. After all, she has very rare abilities. Alan asked the girl again if she was willing to join for the sake of the rest of the people, to help those on his team who were in trouble. Ark thought at this moment that Lin would definitely reject this guy. But Lin's expression showed that she was considering her decision. Ark couldn't believe that Lin didn't immediately say no, because if she agreed, it would be the end of their relationship. At this moment, Ark thought back to his childhood when Lin asked if he wanted to become an adventurer. Ark was sure back then that he would become a great adventurer that a book would be written about. Lin had always asked him as a child if he would take her on an adventure. And now Ark heard Lin asking for her to join Alan's team and realized that now he was left alone. Alan, on the other hand, got what he wanted and praised the young girl for making the right decision. Next, Alan suggested that Lin go and pick out some good equipment for her. The famous adventurer also promised that he would explain all the nuances of their work on the way. Ark asked Lin to wait for a while and talk to him, but Alan blocked the way and asked who he was. Lin still thought of her childhood friend and was worried about what to say at that moment. Alan apologized to Ark and explained that they were trying to attack him. Alan then explained that, from what he had seen, he had a rough idea of what was really going on. But all this is very sad, since everything turns out this way. But it is not uncommon in the world of adventurers that many people are not suitable for this job. The door slammed shut and left Ark alone. Ark realized at that moment that all his dreams of traveling together with the girl he loved were ruined. At the same time, Ark knew that Lin had made the right choice. After all, it turns out that everything was definitely from birth. And since Lin has a higher set of skills and abilities, then she won't be together with him. She found herself on a team that considered itself the chosen lawyers. In such an environment, Lin will be able to maximize the development and use of his abilities. And Ark won't be able to give her such conditions and will only oppress her with his impotence. Ark admitted to himself that it would only be for Lin's good. The adventurers at the tables watched as Ark didn't do anything and was very upset. Many people even felt sorry for him because the guy really expressed maximum frustration. But everyone knew that with this level, there was nothing he could do. After a bit of thought, Ark still decided that he should go after his childhood friend. And even if his skills are too small, but what difference can it make, because they are friends? But as soon as Ark was on the street, something suddenly knocked him off his feet. The huge guy, who apparently was also an adventurer, rudely said that trash like Ark shouldn't get in the way. The cat girl was smiling broadly and joked that they must have stumbled upon some pathetic trash again. The cat girl continued to mock and asked how such non-entities could even exist on Earth. She advised Ark to get out of here quickly, otherwise they would just kill him like a pitiful creature. Ark froze in fear, and the cat girl only rejoiced at the guy's reaction. Meanwhile, the witnesses were discussing that this was the team of a crazy S-rank warrior. The adventurers advised each other to keep their voices down so that Baltsac wouldn't hear them. But everyone was wondering why this crazy and strong warrior ended up in the city of Volton. And that was at the same time that Alan's team was here. But the administrator of the Adventurers Guild, Amy, replied that she personally didn't know anything, and if she did, she wouldn't have spread the information. Ark, realizing that there were some scary people in front of him, hurried away so that he wouldn't be ridiculed again. The guys from Baltsac's team just laughed at Ark, but they still didn't understand who he was. Ark felt a lot of excitement as he made his way down the street. He could feel people's scornful eyes on him, and he knew that everyone hated him for his insignificant weakness. The rest of Ark only came to his senses after moving a considerable distance away from the city. Ark thought that he couldn't remember exactly what had happened when he met the adventurers who were violating him. After all, fear forced him to withdraw and run away into the forest. Ark was disappointed that he hadn't been able to see Lin and talk to her about something important. And now he is unlikely to be able to do it in the future. After all, he is now considered a complete nonentity who has no place in the city of adventurers. A sudden rustle in the bushes caught Ark's attention, and he wondered what it might be. In the end, Ark calmed down because it was just some kind of slime. Looking at the creature, Ark thought it was a good chance to try out his skill. Ark understood that instant death magic was a skill that was very little known and not even understood by many adventurers, as no one had ever learned it. And slime is the weakest monster, and now you can test the strength of your insignificant skill. Ark tried to use his skill and directed the magic energy at the slime clot. The effect impressed the young man, and he saw instant death magic for the first time. Ark admitted to himself that she was much scarier than he had expected before. After all, the black skulls really inspired fear. Ark thought that if his instant death magic worked on the slime, even at such a low first level, there was still hope for him to become an adventurer. But the magic dissipated and nothing happened. The slime was unharmed and continued to move. Chagrin gripped Ark, and he decided to make another attempt to use instant death magic. But everything happened just like the first time. The clot of slime did not react to the deadly influence of magic in any way. Ark realized that his magic was completely useless, even against such a weak monster. Then the young man felt a strange feeling. An incredible weakness washed over his body. Ark realized that it was because it was the first time he had used instant death magic, and apparently his powers are too small. Ark was disappointed that he had to spend so much energy on magic that couldn't even kill a lump of slime. Ark immediately recalled the laughing adventurers who called his skill trash. And the guy himself was called a lousy person and a completely useless adventurer. An incredible depression gripped Ark, and he decided that now his life was completely ruined. Ark kept remembering how Lin had asked him to take her with you when he became an adventurer and started his adventures. But in the end, everything happened completely differently. His childhood friend and beloved girlfriend just left with another guy. The realization of what had happened pierced Ark's mind with despair, and he knew that everything would be different now. Ark realized that he couldn't stay in this forest forever, but he also had no idea where to go or what to do now. Ark found himself thinking that maybe he should go back to his native village and drop all his ideas of becoming an adventurer. The young man was distracted from his thoughts by the very slime that was next to him. Ark wondered why she was still here and hadn't scurried away. Ark then thought that the slime blob was the weakest monster, and he was the weakest adventurer, and it all looked funny. And although this is sad, but they are very similar in many ways. Ark apologized to the slug for trying to kill it with magic. In the end, Ark said that he was going home to his village. But suddenly, something huge appeared nearby, and a loud noise caused Ark to be truly horrified. The clump of slime instantly looked away, and Ark noticed a huge paw with incredibly large claws. But by some incredible chance, the fatal blow missed, and Ark realized that it would not happen again, and the next attack would definitely kill him. In front of the young guy was a killer bear. To kill such a huge monster, you usually need one adventurer from the rank. But a rookie like Ark will never be able to beat him. It was not clear how such a dangerous monster appeared near the city, where there is a huge number of adventurers. Ark realized that if he hesitated, the bear would tear him apart very soon. The only salvation was to run away as soon as possible. Hiding behind one of the trees, Ark only now felt what it was like when everyone was abandoned, and he was just a weakling who could not protect himself. The monster approached relentlessly, and its roar grew louder. Ark decided that he didn't have much time left to live now, and all that has happened to him is a terrible injustice. After all, he couldn't even imagine that his childhood best friend would leave him, and then the adventurers made fun of him, and now he will die alone like some insignificant insect. Apparently, this is the end of every weakling. But something inside Ark made him exclaim that he wouldn't accept it for anything. After all, he absolutely does not want to die, and he has absolutely not yet managed to do anything in his short life. The killer bear growled even louder, and Ark decided that he wasn't going to die in this forest. And who's going to die here is just a bear. Ark used instant death magic in a desperate attempt to escape. At the same time, the young man closed his eyes in fear and heard something heavy fall nearby. When Ark opened his eyes, he thought that this couldn't be happening and that it was all just a bad dream. But then, after calming down a bit, Ark still realized that the huge killer bear Wu was dead, and the only reason he was saved was because of his instant death magic. It really worked and saved the life of a weak loser. The sudden surge of weakness from the stressful situation caused Ark to calm down. He was glad that he had done it and survived this dangerous situation. But then Ark noticed a strange bright light and felt another alarm. Ark clearly saw the message that his skill level had increased. Then there was a suggestion to distribute the available points. A strange display slowly shifted, and Ark wondered what it was all about. After all, no matter where he looked, this small screen was always in front of his face. The young man thought that since his skill proficiency level had increased, how could it be related to his abilities? After thinking for a bit, but still mustering up the courage, Ark touched the strange screen. Immediately, a status appeared where the main parameters of Ark as an adventurer were indicated. From the status menu, it was clear that he belonged to the mage class and was level 1. Everything was very weak. The strength was only 15 units, and the possible magic energy was only 10 units. But unexpectedly for Ark, he saw that his instant death skill was at the 20th level. The young man realized that this was his status window, and although his level as an adventurer remained at the first, but instant death magic was at an incredible 20th level. Ark wondered if his skill was developing after all, since he had never heard of such a phenomenon. Interested in everything he saw, Ark decided to get even more information and clicked on the menu. A skill card appeared in front of him, and Ark began to carefully look at the unfamiliar features. Then a description appeared and pointed out that instant death magic is the ultimate magic. The range of the skill is extremely small. The success rate depends on the distance, so it is recommended to use the skill close to the target. Further development of the skill with the help of the obtained points can allow you to increase the effective distance to the target. Ark thought about the parameter and realized that it was because of the long distance that his skill didn't work on the slime clots last time. Although in a normal battle, the magician is always in the rear and the distance between the enemy and the magician is huge. And it is by this principle that dungeons with monsters are always cleared, adventurers with an attack class go first, and mages follow them. Only now did the young adventurer realize that due to the close distance, his instant death magic had miraculously worked on the huge bear. Ark was also surprised that the places where the bear had hit him didn't really hurt, and it looked like his skills still had the ability to heal. It may have been a minor change in treatment, but still proved to be a useful feature. But no matter what, one thing is clear. In any case, the level of his skill increases. Even though his level as an adventurer remains first, he can now fully fight. Ark then thought about how best to distribute the 20 points on his skill map. The young adventurer wanted to try to find the most useful skills in order to spend the points more efficiently. Ark noticed that the image on the skill card started to glow and it looked unusual. Ark clicked on the coffin image and information appeared. It was stated that this is the burial of the deceased worth 3 points. Using this skill, you can transfer the body of a dead person defeated by instant death to your subspace. Ark realized that this was some kind of special storage facility that he didn't even know about. And it's amazing that such a skill has such a function. After all, selling monster corpses to the guild might be a problem. The bodies of monsters will have to be disassembled and transported in parts, because it will be almost impossible to deliver the whole monster alone with the first level of an adventurer. Therefore, using such a repository would be very convenient and useful. Ark decided to try out that function and applied the burial of the dead on the defeated bear. The guy was surprised at how quickly such a huge monster just disappeared into his storage. The available points became less, and Ark decided to learn the soul recovery skill, which cost 5 experience points. It was stated that the soul recovery skill would transform the skills of a slain instant death monster into their own. Such information greatly surprised the young adventurer who was interested in such a useful effect. Ark thought that the cost for such an effect was quite high, but it was impossible to immediately determine how useful it would be. And perhaps this is his best option for going beyond his first level. And judging from the effect of the burial, he can be sure that the soul recovery skill will also be useful. Ark decided that it was necessary to get it and spend points on it. After finishing his selection, Ark carefully looked at his status menu again. Then the guy decided that he still correctly distributed the available points. Although it is still worth testing your new abilities in practice and not through the status. After all these events, Ark felt much calmer and more confident about his future. Ark was thinking that he still couldn't believe everything that had happened to him that day. After all, he was on the verge of death, but still found a way out of this difficult situation and even learned to use the power that accidentally fell into his hands. The young adventurer realized that he didn't care about anything other than his new goal and didn't yet know how far he could go. But what was clear was that he was a completely different person now, as if he had been born again after defeating that huge bear. Ark promised himself that as the weakest adventurer with the lowest level, he would definitely become the strongest of the strongest. When he was done with self-motivation, Ark went to the Adventurers Guild to sell the loot he had obtained. Seeing this loser with such a rich trophy, the Adventurer Guild administrator was quite surprised. The girl froze in bewilderment, and the guy asked if she would buy the body of a huge killer bear. The Adventurers Guild administrator finally came to her senses and asked how Ark was able to get a monster of such a high rank because it was unbelievable. Ark explained that he killed this killer bear himself with his instant death skills, and it happened in a forest near the city. Behind them, the adventurers could be heard talking in indignation and surprise. Of course, everyone found out that Ark was the same guy who used to be in the Adventurers Guild and didn't show up in any skill, and then he ran away to everyone's ridicule. No one could believe that this weakling and loser was able to defeat a huge killer bear. Ark tried to ignore all the human noise and reminded them that he just wanted to sell the monster's body and get the money. The Adventurers Guild administrator replied that she was willing to help Ark with this transaction. But at this moment, artisans from the Master Guild entered the Adventurers Guild. One of the artisans immediately went to the dead monster and said that he heard that there was a great material for his work here, and then he apologized for not coming sooner. The craftsman's assistant stated that the ore that is in the bear, which is usually damaged in battle, is in excellent condition. The senior craftsman said that this is a very interesting situation. After all, killer bears are very dangerous predators, and they have destroyed many experienced people. Therefore, it is very difficult to kill a young and fast individual bear, leaving its body completely unharmed. This is the first time he's seen it. The senior craftsman said that he was willing to buy this monster if Ark didn't mind. The young adventurer was delighted with the opportunity to earn money and agreed to a deal with the artisans. The craftsman offered Ark 20 gold pieces for selling the dead bear. The craftsman explained that this price includes paying for the quality of the trophy according to the guild's standards. Ark was satisfied with the result. After all, he didn't even expect to get so many gold coins. The guy thanked him for the deal and promised to come back again. The young adventurer was thinking that this reward would now help him improve his position, and the coffin skill was useful, so he didn't mind the points spent. Ark decided that this money would be enough for him to buy some good equipment. Ark wanted to rest after all the adventures, and in the morning already start doing business. After all, now he must first of all prove a lot to himself. As planned, Ark went straight to the equipment merchant's shop in the morning to make a purchase. The merchant turned out to be a cheerful person and was surprised that the first customer arrived so early, and apparently this man was overflowing with enthusiasm. The merchant asked what he could offer from his product, but then the merchant saw that an ordinary child had entered his shop and relaxed without expecting a good profit. But to the merchant's surprise, Ark stated that he needed good equipment to dive into a weak dungeon. Shaking a bag of coins, Ark said that he had the money to buy it and showed one round piece of gold. At the sight of the gold coin, the merchant visibly perked up and changed his attitude towards the client. The merchant began to ask the guy a lot of questions, trying to find out if he was really an adventurer. Why was he going to the dungeon so early, and why was he alone at all? The merchant promised that he could offer the best product for every taste. The merchant said that first Ark should buy a lantern, as well as water, and of course a small supply of food. The merchant advised buying armor, a comfortable jacket, and many other things. Ark was tired of all the caring merchant's chatter and asked him to calm down. The merchant quickly prepared the necessary equipment and said that the clothes looked great on the guy. The merchant also placed recovery potions, portable food, a hanging lantern, and a handy leather water flask on the table, and said that these supplies would be enough to survive for several days in case of emergency. Then an enterprising merchant offered to buy a belt bag, with which your hands will always be free. Ark made the shop owner happy and said that he would buy all these things, and he would also like to buy a local map of this territory. When Ark finished shopping, he received a lot of compliments and good luck wishes, and the merchant promised to make a discount for such a good customer next time. Ark immediately went outside the city, and thanks to the map he bought, he found out that the nearest dungeon from the city was in the eastern forest. Ark also found out from the city gate guard that the journey to the dungeon would take about an hour on foot if you didn't hurry too much. The young adventurer decided that his top priority right now was to become stronger. And to do this, he needs to kill and absorb as many monsters as possible to show his potential. The best place to destroy monsters is, of course, a dungeon. And since no one ever passes it alone, Ark can achieve the maximum effect of his abilities. Ark decided that he should do it, and most importantly start, and then it will be seen in the future. Moving through the forest was not difficult, because as it turned out, there was a fairly good path leading to the dungeon. And in some places there were even signs in the trees, which greatly facilitated. A little tired, Ark quenched his thirst before entering the dungeon. Ark finally reached the eastern dungeon. After reading the sign at the entrance, the young adventurer found out that the dungeon is a place of work for adventurers and is a danger to untrained people. Usually, the dungeon is divided into layers called floors. A dungeon is a place where the terrain and monsters are completely different depending on the floor, and you can't expect anything specific from the next floor. And of course, everyone knows that the lower the floor, the stronger the monsters are, and the difficulty level of the floor increases accordingly as you go down. But the reward for the high danger of traveling fully compensates for the effort spent, and therefore adventurers tend to go to such places. But Ark decided for himself that this is not what he needs right now. After all, the main danger of any dungeon is monsters, and they are exactly what it needs for its purpose. Still, the young adventurer plucked up his courage and moved forward. Ark thought that the upper floors were perfect for testing his abilities. After walking quite a bit, Ark heard someone's footsteps and realized that the monsters were probably heading towards him. It was just as the novice adventurer expected, and soon he saw the goblins. Goblins are rank E monsters, and they don't have much strength and are very weak individually. Goblins have weapons, which indicates that they have intelligence, and they act more often in groups, and therefore they are especially dangerous when there are a lot of them. Ark thought that even though these monsters were too weak, there was no need to relax, since there were at least 10 of them. And at first glance, he, an inexperienced adventurer, is easy prey for them. Ark realized that the goblins didn't take him seriously, and so he used instant death magic without hesitation. Everything changed at the same time, and the goblins felt the magic power of the Ark. One of the goblins was bolder than his fellows and charged forward at the adventurer. Ark immediately realized that the goblin was trying to close the distance and attack as quickly as possible. But this was only in the hands of the adventurer, because in the magic of instant death, the most important thing is the distance. And the farther away the enemy is, the lower the chances of success. But yesterday, Ark improved the distance by 1 level, and also improved the success rate by 2 levels at once. The young adventurer was just waiting for the goblin to get as close as possible. Having caught the right moment, Ark knew that it was time to act. Instant death magic swooped down on the evil monster. The goblin screamed in pain, and its speed immediately became 0. Ark was overjoyed at his success, but immediately realized that the other goblins weren't going to retreat at all, but instead were even more angry. The young adventurer allowed the goblins to surround him and get closer, so that the distance was acceptable for using his magic. Ark began to use instant death magic, and it turned out to be an effective method against monsters. The opponents were neutralized, and Ark himself noticed that even after using magic 3 times in a row, he did not feel tired, but on the contrary, after each new kill, his body gained strength. Strength was restored with a soul recovery skill, and all the energy from the slain goblin was instantly transferred to it. Ark decided that even the fact that he was able to dodge the goblin's last attack was also possible thanks to this skill, as his reaction time was greatly improved. When Ark finished fighting the goblins, he decided that the monsters weren't strong enough to level up after all. Ark opened his stats and noticed that the basic stats had increased significantly, but his adventurer level remained the same. The guy realized that it became much easier for him with the increased range and probability of success. The only thing that bothered the young adventurer was that perhaps his stat boost wasn't faster than leveling up. At the same time, it became obvious that after each monster was killed, its strength immediately increased. And all thanks to the useful soul restoration skill, which still needed to be studied in more detail. Ark speculated that it was possible that while he was killing monsters, he could use magic indefinitely, since magic power was restored through killing. With the burial skill, Ark collected all the trophies and hid them in the vault. Continuing on, Ark noticed a strange opening. Having penetrated inside the mysterious room, the young adventurer wondered what its size might be, since the meager light could not reach the walls. The most unpleasant thing for Ark was the foul stench that grew stronger with each step. Soon, Ark noticed the source of the foul smell, and it turned out to be ferocious orcs. Orc is a very large and vicious monster, similar to a wild boar. Orcs prefer heavy weapons like large axes and clubs. The young adventurer realized that the further he progressed in the dungeon, the higher the rank of the monsters became. The orcs, unlike the goblins, did not hesitate and immediately attacked the uninvited guest. Ark was surprised at how fast the orcs were for their huge size. While dodging the attacks, the young adventurer tried to use instant death magic at the same time and hoped to win at close range. One of the orcs felt the influence of dark magic on himself and fell to his knees and began to wheeze heart-rendingly, unable to help himself. At the same time, Ark realized that unlike the goblins, the orcs didn't have a shred of fear. Carefully observing each movement of the opponents, Ark decided not to stop and choose the right moment to finish off the monsters. Everything went well, and this time Ark won another victory. The young adventurer noticed that something about him was different, because in the past, he would never have been able to react so quickly to other people's attacks, but now he is quick to perceive everything. And probably his dexterity affects even the speed of perception of the situation with the eyes. Ark had thought up until this point that his weak point was the distance to the enemy, but now he could create his own proximity state, which was perfect for using instant death magic. The young adventurer thought that it was time to finish with the rest of the orcs, as their stench was already too much to bear. Ark continued to deftly evade the attacks of the orcs, and was amazed at how persistent these monsters were. The young adventurer noticed that there were only 3 orcs left, and it wasn't as dangerous as it had been in the beginning. Ark said that he even felt a little sorry for those orcs. But whatever the case, he must kill them all to achieve his goal. After defeating the orcs, Ark thought that even after killing them, his adventure level still hadn't risen. And compared to the killer bear, the monsters of the upper layers were not as useful in gaining experience. Ark also realized that orc meat is quite tasty and adventurers often buy it for food on their campaigns. And so, when you return to the city, you will need to sell the extracted orc meat to merchants in order to get additional profit. Ark was surprised when he found a strange staircase in one of the passages of the cave, at the bottom of which there was a gap. The light was too bright, but the young adventurer decided to continue on his way and find out everything. It turned out that there were glowing stones in the walls, which were the source of the bright glow at this level of the dungeon. Ark couldn't believe that in the dungeon, he found a place where there was a waterfall and a forest. He hadn't expected this at all. It was so bright that the lantern had to be set aside. But then Ark was attracted by some noise, and after a moment it became clear that it was a human voice. Ark heard someone calling out to him, and it turned out that it was a group of some adventurers. The young adventurer tried to see who it was, but it turned out that they themselves were quickly approaching him. One of the adventurers excitedly asked if Ark was okay. The young adventurer asked if something had really happened. The adventurers explained that they had never expected to see a child alone in the dungeon. After all, Ark seems like a real madman, and that's why they were so excited when they met him. The curly-haired adventurer then asked how Ark ended up alone in the dungeon in the first place, and if he got hurt while wandering in the dark. The young adventurer replied that although he had to fight various monsters along the way, he was fine. The head of the adventure group asked in surprise that Ark really wanted to die, since he fought the monsters alone. Ark replied that he certainly didn't intend to die, even though he realized that entering a dungeon was considered truly insane. The girl from the group advised her leader to calm down, because the guy is really alright, and since they've all had a good hunt today, they can all get out of the dungeon together now. The guy in the hat boasted that their group was able to get a lot of orc meat, and it needs to be sold in the city as soon as possible. The leader agreed to the suggestion of going back and said that Ark was very lucky to have met him. After all, it will be much easier for him to return with his group. He also explained that they are now in a safe zone. The young adventurer asked what it meant to be a safe zone, since he still didn't know much about dungeon construction. The head of the adventurer group explained that for unknown reasons, some dungeons like this have strange places that monsters can't enter, and adventurers often use such places to rest before moving on. Ark thought that if there were places like the safe zone, then there were other interesting places in the dungeon structure that he had yet to learn. The head of the adventure team suggested going to the surface, but Ark tried to explain that he wasn't ready yet. But suddenly there was a commotion, and everyone turned their attention to the nearest bushes. Another group of adventurers appeared nearby, their members clearly injured. The adventurers were scared and confused. The head of the first group tried to calm the wounded guys down and explained that they were now in a safe zone. The curly-haired guy asked the girl Ori to try to heal the injured guys and ease their suffering. Ori immediately applied healing magic, and it had the desired effect. The injured adventurers thanked Ori for her help and said that it was much easier for them now. The leader of the first group asked the exhausted adventurers what had really happened to them. Judging by their stories, they were caught by a group of skeletons, which turned out to be very strong monsters and therefore had to get out of the way so as not to die. The head of the first group of adventurers was a little surprised. After all, the undead are certainly unpleasant monsters. But for a D-ranked team, they shouldn't have been a big problem. The wounded guys replied that they themselves thought so and expected such resistance. But what they saw was much more than just an ordinary skeleton. The shabby adventurers explained that they had come across one very large skeleton, and it was clearly not human, and it was most likely the skeleton of an ogre. Ogres, or as they are also called, cannibals, as well as giants. They are usually much larger than humans, and can grow up to 4 meters tall. And in some cases, ogres can have a B rank, which makes them incredibly dangerous creatures. The first party of adventurers was unpleasantly surprised by this terrible news. No one could understand how such a strong monster could appear on the top floor of a not-so-dangerous dungeon. The guys from the broken squad explained that they did not have a single chance to defeat such an opponent, so they miraculously managed to get out. The guys recovered a little, and from their words it was possible to find out that their squad was able to escape through a passage in the rock, which was hidden between the trees, and a monster of such a huge size as the skeleton ogre wouldn't be able to pass through such a small passageway. They were very worried because they couldn't move fast because of their injuries, but now they are in a safe zone. Then the guys asked if they could be helped to the surface, and they would be happy to be escorted. Suddenly, powerful thuds were heard, and everyone felt a sense of excitement. Ark immediately realized which direction the sound was coming from and peered at it. Soon, the others began to clearly understand that something was approaching them, because the blows turned out to be heavy steps of someone very large. A huge monster appeared in front of the adventurers and caused panic in both parties. No one expected danger in this seemingly safe place. The adventurers rushed in different directions, shouting to each other to be careful. Ark was surprised by the monster's spectacular appearance and noticed how agile it was, even for its huge size. The wounded boys were shouting that the damned skeleton had managed to get over the cliff and was now here to finish them off. The ghastly roar of the ogre skeleton was truly terrifying. The guy in the hat felt the strongest horror from the influence of such a monster. The rest of the adventurers understood that the monster's rank was beyond their abilities, and if the skeleton ogre hit anyone once, it would be certain death. The commander of the first adventurer squad didn't understand what to do in such a difficult situation and decided that the only option was to run as fast as possible. As a result, the commander of the squad ordered to run to the stairs that lead to the top, and at the same time help the wounded guys from another squad. The commander also said that Ark was coming with them, but the guy was no longer there. The young adventurer decided to act. Ark realized that the ogre skeleton was very strong, but he could see all of its movements. Although with a difference in size, their speed is almost equal. Ark thought that it was necessary to act as before and get as close to the enemy monster as possible for better efficiency. And so it happened. Ark used instant death magic against the skeleton ogre, and the dark force rushed at the enemy. This time, Ark didn't understand if his death magic could work on a monster that was already considered dead. Experienced adventurers watched Ark's movements and were surprised by his speed. Ark had indeed reached the limit of his speed and was very adept at dodging all of the ogre skeleton's attacks. The commander of the first group of adventurers admitted that he was impressed and now understands why this young guy was alone in the dungeon. The adventurers also noticed that Ark was mostly just dodging, and everything points to the fact that the magic that Ark uses does not give the desired effect and does not stop the monster. The head of the squad ordered his partner to get out and take things with him, and he must help the brave guy. At the same time, the commander grabbed a crate of orc meat. Ark was thinking that he could easily avoid the monster's attack, but it was already obvious that instant death magic didn't work. After all, many attempts were unsuccessful. Ark kept hoping that he would succeed, since he still had the strength. The young adventurer decided that it was necessary to get as close to the ogre skeleton as possible in order to achieve the maximum effect of dark magic. But the unexpected happened. Ark tried to use his deadly skill, but this time nothing happened. Ark wondered if the magic power had really run out at such a bad time. The guy felt his vulnerability and said that it just can't be. Ark didn't understand what was going on, because the ogre skeleton was suddenly distracted by the orc meat thrown to it. At that moment, the leader of the adventurer squad stepped in and shouted to distract the monster. Ark thought that the squad leader had been very clever, hiding in a dense forest where the skeleton ogre wouldn't be able to use all of its speed and mobility. It turned out that an experienced adventurer wants to use not only his skills and items against the monster, but also the area in which he found himself. Squad leader Jag was thinking that he needed to buy as much time as possible to help the others get out of the dungeon, and it will be great if he succeeds, and only then he will decide for himself how to act. Ark asked the Jag commander if he was all right, but Jag replied that everything was hopeless and he did not know how to defeat such a sharp monster. Jag asked why the young Ark didn't just run away with the others, since he is very fast and could easily break away from the skeleton. Ark explained that his only purpose here was to kill the skeleton ogre. Squad leader Jag was surprised by this answer and asked what chance Ark had at all, since he was much weaker than an ogre skeleton, and his magic didn't work at all against the monster. Ark agreed that instant death magic was a bit useless in this situation, although he was counting on his ability. Jag thought it was incredible that such a young adventurer could use instant death magic. The commander of the adventurer squad asked if this was the instant death magic from the many rumors that no one had ever studied. And isn't this a useless skill? Because if it is, then how can it even help in a battle with a monster? Ark asked the adventurer commander to keep a low profile. Then he explained that he had actually been able to defeat monsters with instant death magic before. But now everything is completely different, and there are doubts that his rare magic will be able to work on a creature that belongs to the undead. Jag agreed that the situation was indeed very complicated, and that the ogre skeleton was already long dead. So it is unlikely that the magic of instant death will be able to help in the fight against it. The squad leader asked how Ark was even able to decide on such an act, go against the most dangerous monster without even knowing if it would be possible to fight it. Ark recalled that the squad leader himself had decided to be left alone with the skeleton ogre, and at the same time, he was well aware that he would not be able to win. Ark asked if those two members of his team were so important to him that he sacrificed himself for them. But no matter what, if they all decided to run away together at the same time, then the monster would definitely grab a few people and be able to kill them. Ark said that he was the only one who wasn't on any team, and if he had been left alone, then no team would have lost its members and everyone would have won. But the Jag commander replied that it was a bad decision and not worthy of a good person to leave someone in the lurch. But the young adventurer reminded him that all adventurers already understood long ago, that the skill that Ark was born with is considered useless among other people. Ark explained that due to such a terrible attitude towards himself, he finally realized that with his skill, he didn't need any team at all. And if it happens that he actually dies in this dungeon, then people's accusations will be confirmed and his instant death magic will really be completely useless. The Jag commander was surprised by the young man's admission and marveled at his determination. Jag stated that they will fight together and therefore must definitely defeat the skeleton ogre. The squad leader explained that it was too late for the two of them to run away, and he wouldn't be able to sleep well knowing that he had run away and left someone to their deaths. And so together they will have a better chance of survival, and perhaps they will succeed. Ark and Jag finally found a moment to introduce themselves and promised that they would help during the battle with the monster. And then Jag suggested that we stop hiding and move forward. 3 years ago, Jag was dismissed from the service without warning. The guy was shocked by this news and tried to find out what the reason for his dismissal was. His commanding officer explained that a notification from Central Headquarters had just arrived. And I agree with the decision of the Central Headquarters. The level limit for those who can serve was raised. And since the YAG limit had a level 30 limit, that wasn't enough in the current situation. The commander said that he wants Yang Ah to resign and not delay it, because he still needs to find new people to replace them. The commander admitted that he himself was not happy with this decision and sincerely regretted that he had to dismiss reliable people. But he can't do anything else, because this is the decision of the command. Jag reminded that even though he has a low-level limit, he has a lot of experience that is not easy to get. But the commander replied that everything was already decided and nothing could be changed. The commander said that unfortunately in this country, only the level limit and skills of a person are important. The commander also asked not to worry about Jag because the people he trained have a large level limit, and they will soon be able to fill the gap in experience and become a worthy replacement. Many YAG colleagues were shocked that such an experienced person was leaving the service and retiring. Jag explained that this was not his decision and that the reason was his insufficient level limit. Therefore, he leaves all matters to his students and wishes them good luck. Without delay, Jag left the service with some resentment because he spent a lot of time and effort to achieve a lot in this place. Jag decided to let the ogre skeleton get closer to him. At the same time, the commander of the adventurer squad vaguely understood that this was his plan for defeating the monster. It was obvious that the monster had a large attack range and was very difficult to get close to. Its magic resistance was also higher than that of normal monsters, and the further away the opponent is from the working range of instant death magic, the less likely the skill is to be successfully used. Jag admitted that he was completely unaware that instant death magic depends on distance. But Ark explained that this was something he had learned during previous encounters with monsters. The YAG commander suggested in this case that he would attract the enemy and expose himself to the blow. And then during the ogre skeleton attack, Ark has my best chance to get as close to the monster as possible. Ark reminded the commander that if he was hit by such a monster, he would probably die. Jag said that although it doesn't show on him, he is actually a former soldier. And even if he is facing an opponent ranked higher than him, he can concentrate all his strength on defense, completely without thinking about attacking, and then he will have a chance to withstand any blow. A fearless commander YAG stated that he didn't become an adventurer to avoid. After all, he had already escaped once, and it wouldn't happen again. Jag decided that the best option would be to take a position among the trees. Since in this position, the skeleton will not be able to use large weapons and hit with sweeping blows, so the skeleton will not be able to attack from the side. And in such a situation, you can only use simple weapon movements. Of the options, the monster has only a vertical blow or a straight blow. And if there is also a tree behind the enemy, then its maneuverability will completely disappear. Jag noticed that the ogre skeleton was choosing a normal straight punch. The brave commander realized that even if you are inferior to the enemy in speed, but limit the range of action, you can cope with the attack of even such a strong opponent. Jag planned that when the enemy started attacking, he would have to rush towards them and close the distance. But you cannot rush too much, because of a mistake, you can die. It's quite clear that their difference in strength is too huge. Although in a situation like this, the ogre skeleton wouldn't be able to hit with full force, and this will be a chance to beat him. The experienced commander YAG decided that at the most inopportune moment for the enemy, he would step forward and strike, thereby preventing the ogre skeleton from finishing its attack. And this plan should work. Jag tuned in to the outcome and prepared to act. Behind. The commander thought, encouraging himself, that he would definitely succeed. And when the right moment came, Jag shouted that it was time to act. His shout was also a signal for Ark, who was ready to fulfill his role. Ark quickly approached the enemy and noticed that Commander YAG had lost his balance. Ark decided that it was time to act now, because the distance to the ogre's skeleton allows you to effectively use instant death magic. But suddenly, Ark felt a powerful blow and only had time to think what the hell was going on. Commander Yag was surprised by what he saw because the skeleton attacked his partner with a hidden hand. Yag realized that the corpses of other ogres had been stolen, and it was unclear whether he needed to deal with it or not. The huge skeleton gritted its teeth viciously, and Commander Yag was afraid for the young Ark, who was sent flying far away from the powerful blow. Ark thought that he had lost consciousness for a while and tried to recover. Ark noticed that the Jag commander was lying unconscious and cursed himself for being weak. The young adventurer began to think feverishly about what he should do at this moment and what in general he can counteract the power of a huge monster. Ark began to doubt himself and recalled those adventurers who had laughed at him, accusing him of being weak. Meanwhile, Commander Yag thought that it would be much better for Ark to just run away to stay alive. Commander Yag also thought of his friends with regret and felt sad that he could no longer have fun with them. But then Jag felt hopeful when he saw a young adventurer charging towards a huge monster. Such a desperate rush was the last chance for salvation. After all, if Ark decided to attack the ogre skeleton from above, then it would be nice if the guy managed to grab onto the monster's body, and then he would have a chance to hit the target accurately. Jag watched what was happening and thought that everything looked too unreal. After all, such a young guy was able to catch such a dangerous monster off guard. After reaching the target, Ark used his Coffins of the Dead skill, hoping to destroy the monster. Commander Yag sincerely wished that Ark could achieve victory because his strange abilities looked strong. But the skeleton ogre didn't give up and tried to hit the fast guy. Ark himself thought that he should finish this whole thing while he still had his magic powers. Meanwhile, the rest of the adventurers could hear the hideous roar of the ogre skeleton. Everyone was alarmed and trying to figure out what was really going on. The wounded guy said that he had no strength and was ready to give up. The wounded man said that since it was only a matter of time before such monsters of this rank were destroyed, it would be best if they just dragged him here before it all went too far. But Yag's friend Doug yelled at the injured guy that they should all just calm down and not panic. Doug himself was just as nervous and worried that there was nothing he could do in this difficult situation. Then Doug and the other adventurers thought that this wasn't exactly the end of them, as the silhouette of a huge monster appeared from behind the nearby trees, clearly wanting to kill them all. But in the next moment, Doug and the others were surprised to see the huge ogre skeleton roar loudly and fall to pieces. Doug just stood there, trying to figure out what was really going on. But then the experienced adventurer was overcome with joy because he saw ahead of his commander Yaga, who was slowly approaching in the company of a young guy. The adventurers rushed forward to help their commander. After all, he was able to defeat a very dangerous monster and survive no matter what. The exasperated merchant said that he couldn't do this anymore, and that the whole story was completely incomprehensible to him. Ark himself was indignant and couldn't understand why he had to sit in such an uncomfortable position. The merchant asked in disbelief that since Ark was actually an adventurer, what rank did he reach? Ark decided not to come up with anything and cautiously replied that his rank was E. The merchant exclaimed that this was the rank of an ordinary novice, and it was very strange. The merchant also asked indignantly how, in that case, Ark was able to defeat all the dangerous monsters he brought with him with his bare hands. The young adventurer replied that it was indeed true, but he didn't know how to prove it to dispel all doubts. Ark, of course, came to this shop in Volton City to raise money for the monsters he killed. After all, he needed money to achieve his goal. But the merchant decided not to trust the young man and began to torment him with his questions. Ark revealed that he had given many of his materials to Commander Yagu and the other adventurers. After all, it wasn't a bad reward for everyone who was in the dungeon. And when I returned to the city itself to recover and relax after visiting the dungeon, of course, I came across this interesting store. The merchant craftsman replied that if this was all true, then he understood everything. Ark also explained that he doesn't want to join any adventurer group at all. The craftsman asked if Ark didn't understand that this decision would cause him huge problems. Why did the merchant say that he didn't really know if Ark was lying or not? But in any case, he had to admit the fact that if these materials are really real, then the question is why Ark found them on the main street in the guild itself. After all, it's very strange that Ark would come all this way just to come to his humble shop. Ark replied that he was willing to explain his decision to sell all the materials here and not elsewhere. The young adventurer explained that he actually went to the guild itself in the beginning, but there were some problems there. After all, he had become very different from the rest of the adventurers because of the materials he brought. After all, their quantity and quality began to attract unnecessary attention from other adventurers. Ark revealed that while he was in the guild, he started a conversation with other newbies like himself. But they began to accuse him of theft and began to take away all the materials that he had. And one person was so brazen that he even began to threaten violence, thereby attracting the attention of other people. The artisan merchant replied that he was aware of the ban on duels in the guild itself. And now he understood why Ark didn't want to visit the guild anymore for at least the next few days. The craftsman asked who the person who tried to attack Ark was. The guy explained that the leader of the group was level 20. This man had long hair parted in the middle, and he ran away first when he sensed danger. The merchant said that this guy must have gone back to his old ways, and he knows him well from his bad deeds. Then the craftsman said that apparently the guild needed some special reason to sell so that no one would ask unnecessary questions. Although of course it all depends on the product itself. And if Ark decided to sell the orcs, it certainly didn't attract a healthy amount of attention. The merchant said that no matter what, but if a young guy got such a rare skull from an ogre skeleton, it means that he is very good for a person with an E rank, and if Ark really managed to deal with such a dangerous monster alone, then this is generally an incredible story. The young adventurer explained that he had something else to tell the merchant. Ark revealed that he had encountered an ogre skeleton when he went to the dungeon alone. But then he met a group of adventurers led by Yag and was with them. The craftsman was surprised when he heard the name Yaga because he was absolutely sure that this person was no longer involved in the affairs of adventurers. The young adventurer then revealed that during the confrontation with the monster, he and Yag were able to achieve a result together, and in the end, they defeated the skeleton ogre and all survived. Ark asked if the merchant really didn't believe that he could use instant death magic. The craftsman's whole appearance showed that the young adventurer's words were too dubious. The merchant asked if he had managed to defeat the skeleton ogre with just one blow. And isn't an adventurer's rank more important than their ability level? And how could such an inexperienced person have such strong magic in the first place? All this, of course, looks like a common joke. Ark thought about it and remembered how much the adventurer Commander Yag was a good-natured person. After all, he gave him a helping hand in a very difficult situation. And now it's Ark's turn to help Yagu, because it's obvious that this person enjoys a lot of trust. As a result, the merchant, after a little thought, said that he would stop asking questions and was ready to buy all the goods in bulk. The merchant explained that he also had a business of some sort, but he needs a little time to set the price and arrange insurance in case something happens. The merchant asked if the guy was willing to wait. The young adventurer replied that he didn't care at the moment and agreed to such terms. The merchant then offered Ark a look at the beautiful cloak and asked if Ark would come across this good thing. The cloak was really quite good, and the merchant said that Ark could keep it as a bonus for insurance. The merchant explained that there was no need to worry about it, and that the quality of the cloak was first class. If something happens, this raincoat will always look as good as new. Ark only now realized that he had completely forgotten about his appearance, as all of his belongings had been reduced to shreds after the battle with the big monster. And he doesn't even look like an adventurer who is trustworthy right now, but rather like some ragamuffin. Ark decided not to give up the good stuff and immediately tried on the offered cloak. The merchant enthusiastically declared that the cloak was very suitable for a young adventurer. The merchant then said that in principle, their city is just overflowing with new adventurers like Ark. And so Ark can go to a small shop, he will be perfectly helped. The merchant craftsman asked if Ark was a wanderer by any chance, explaining that he himself had recently returned from the village and seen such guys on the way. The merchant explained that the city was actually modest, and that the nearest dungeon was very close. And this place is great for beginners, as well as for people who want to earn a little extra money. There are also a whole bunch of monsters living near the city, and although many of them are dangerous, this is a great opportunity to increase your level and earn money. And the king himself is making great efforts to get rid of the local monsters. And to do this, he often asks S-rank adventurers for help in solving this issue. S-rank adventurers are recruited from all over the world, and recently, quite by accident, it became clear that in addition to Alan, Baldsack cannot move without help, and it is not known what reasons they have to make a lot of money. The merchant asked Ark to earn as much money as possible so as not to embarrass him, and he can guarantee that his materials are not so bad. The craftsman stated that from now on, the young adventurer could always drop by his workshop at any time. Then the cheerful merchant asked me to send his regards to Mr. Gale from another store. After Ark left the shop, he wanted to go straight for Yag, but it was still too early. Meanwhile, Ark decided to take a look at his status. The adventurer's level was still first, although instant death magic had reached level 25. All key indicators have also improved. The young adventurer realized that such significant improvements were due to him killing the skeleton ogre. All of his stats have increased at least 4 times what they were before that fight. Of course, that monster was very rare and dangerous, but still its indicators were too different. Ark decided that he could now fight on his own with such stats. After that, the young adventurer decided to buy some artifacts and go back to the dungeon. Noticing how the sun had already set over the horizon, Ark decided not to postpone his trip until later and went alone to the dungeon. While going to the dungeon in the night forest, Ark noticed cannibal monsters and forest wolves on his way. The cannibal is a carnivorous plant monster that devours all small animals, except insects if they pass by. And forest wolves attack people who happen to be on their territory. Both of these types of monsters belong to the E-class. Ark thought that these monsters were probably getting too active at night in a non-dungeon. But the young hero quickly dealt with them with the help of his instant death magic and continued on his way to the intended goal. Ark thought that the rank of these monsters was much lower than that of the orcs and bear that he had defeated earlier. But after killing them, he still managed to gain at least a little extra strength, which would never hurt an adventurer. The young man once again heard the forest wolf approaching and prepared to repel the attack. Well, to his surprise, the monster ran past, which greatly surprised Ark. He wondered what was really going on, since the forest wolf ran past him and didn't even notice him, and it should have been attacking. And maybe the forest wolf was just afraid of someone. Ark went further and heard the cries for help, and then saw the beast girl running towards him. The girl screamed that there was danger behind her. Ark immediately noticed her long ears and tail and realized that the girl was half human. The young adventurer couldn't understand what had happened to her since she ran out of the depths of the forest at night. Ark asked the terrified girl what had happened to her. But the beast girl was panic-stricken and kept shouting about some village and people and calling for help. Ark couldn't understand anything from her unintelligible phrases, but it was clear that she was very scared. Ark then wondered if it wasn't the beast girl herself who had startled those forest wolves that were running away from the forest. The young adventurer realized that there was something scary in the forest. And if this girl is so afraid of the beast, then it means that there are good reasons for it, because it is simply in a terrible state. Therefore, you need to be careful, because this someone can pursue the girl. But soon, as expected, Ark discovered the reason for everyone's fear and said that now he himself understands what scared everyone so much. A young adventurer with the help of magical abilities decided to check the forest for danger. Ark realized that the enemy wasn't showing any reaction yet, but he had a hunch that the monster was just being very careful and biding its time. Then, from the depths of the forest, an eerie roar could be heard that could frighten even experienced adventurers. Ark wondered at that moment why Roar wasn't alone now. And considering that he's already heard 3 different voices, that's not a good thing at all. The young adventurer realized that in such a difficult situation, when he was protecting an outsider, he would not be able to focus on the target and make a clear shot with instant death magic. In addition, there is a huge risk of dealing with several opponents at once during close combat, and this is a completely different danger. But still, there was nothing to do, and Ark decided that he should try to fight, because there was no point in running. The young adventurer remembered that after defeating the skeleton ogre, he had some new abilities to destroy monsters. Ark decided that now was a good time to try a double entombment on the enemy. Double entombment is an ability obtained from the ogre's 4-armed skeleton. The success rate and magic energy consumption of the next instant death spell increases 4-fold. Ark decided that he would have to work a little harder, but now he had to bet on this most powerful attack he had. The young adventurer noticed a strange silhouette in the shadows of the trees and fired his shot. The blow landed right on target and Ark was delighted with his accuracy. The young adventurer immediately felt extremely dizzy after consuming magic, and now it wasn't clear if he could continue using it after such an expense. Hearing the sound of twigs cracking and bushes breaking, Ark thought that the rest of the opponents had probably run away, which was very good in this situation. Ark tried to calm the frightened beast girl down and offered her a potion that needed to be drunk. The guy advised the girl to take her time and drink slowly to get the best effect. After beating the potion out of the bottle a little, the girl started coughing, but then gradually calmed down. The young adventurer decided that this strange stranger must be very exhausted and fell asleep when she felt calmed down. After all, the experienced stress cannot pass so easily in the body. Ark thought for a while and decided that he wouldn't be able to level up today, so it was better to take the beast girl to Voltana City for now. At parting, the young adventurer told looking into the forest that his unknown opponent should prepare for the next meeting and not forget his magic power. Ark tried to pick up the dead monster, but it didn't work out, and this greatly surprised the adventurer, because there were no problems with this before. In the end, the young man decided that he couldn't take too long. Saving the beast girl is a top priority in this case. At the same time, he thought that he had already encountered a similar situation before, and now he needed to think about it carefully. Meanwhile, the group of adventurers under Alan's command continued to do the work of clearing out the monsters. Alan carefully monitored the progress of the new member of his team and praised Lynn for her progress. Alan asked Lynn if she had a level up after the battle, but the girl replied that she hadn't noticed any changes yet. Lynn asked if her achievements so far weren't enough. Alan replied that developing 20 levels in 2 days was a good result, and it could be said that Lynn was growing rapidly. The squad leader promised that next time they would not work so hard and would allow themselves to rest for a while. Thief Fiona said she'd had enough effort for 1 day, because working with her hands was surprisingly exhausting. The Holy Knight Alice, along with the magician Dorothea, supported the idea of taking a break in their adventures. Lynn thanked all the members of her new team for their excellent cooperation, as well as for their trust. Lynn promised that she would try even harder in the future and prove her right to be together with them. Alan told the young girl that they were her friends and always ready to help in any situation. Therefore, she should behave more freely in their team, because they still have many great things to do together. Then Alan announced to all the members of his team that they were going back. Alan went to the Adventurers Guild and asked how Alice was doing. The adventurer was eager to hear the latest news, and Alice knew best about the latest developments. Alice explained that she had the king's insistence in her hands and asked the adventurer how his search for the key was going. Alan said that he didn't want to say it this time, but Alice really is a girl with a difficult character. The reason Wang's rank adventurers, including Alan and his team, were recruited into the king's service, it really wasn't about defeating the monsters that the entire city was talking about. In fact, they were here at the request of the king of this country himself. They were all searching for a certain key that was rumored to be on the lowest level of the dungeon. Alan himself did not know the power or use of this key, but the strangeness of being given a title and fiefdom as a reward attracted him to this region. No matter how much his rank abilities he possessed, Alan couldn't achieve power like the nobility. And now, the king himself had promised him such an incredible reward just for breaking the dungeon. If he gets this key himself, then the question arises whether the rebellion and power will be destroyed. And is it really profitable and valuable enough to silence the nobles forever? What would happen next, of course, was not clear to anyone, but it was still to be found out. Alice asked the adventurer what about the new girl and how long he was going to take care of her. Alan replied that there was no need to worry about it, since there weren't many people in his group who could enter the lower floors of the dungeon. Therefore, you should not rush things, but you should understand that this girl definitely has a good talent. In fact, Alan's team never had a healer with recovery skills. If it is more accurate and correct to say that this was not necessary due to their great combat power. But in the dungeon indicated as the location of the key, their power had no effect, because the anomaly monster ruled there. This was unlike anything Alan and his squad had encountered during their brief stint as an adventurer. One thing is clear, the further you go down, the more monsters appear, as if the dungeon itself refuses to let intruders in. Of course, there is no problem with the strength of his team members. But in a maze with different laws, their recovery resources were constantly being reduced due to the sheer number of things. And it was for this purpose that he found the girl Lynn. After all, it wasn't easy to find a healer who could compare to Alan and the others. Alan almost gave up, but then he went to the guild. He had stumbled upon a high-level limit level with 3 priest skills. Such a find was quite a miracle. After all, it was extremely rare to find such a talent. But in the end, I had to wait a few days for Lin's level to rise. Alan was worried that during this time Balzac and his team might overtake him. After all, we should not forget that Balzac stood out very much among the recognized adventurers. Alice said that she thought the rest of the adventure teams could compete with them. Alan said that there was no need to worry because others have problems with doctors, and it is unlikely that other adventurers from foreign lands someone will help only out of goodwill, since most likely no one will help them in case of problems. Alan also pointed out that the 3 keys Alice had asked for didn't really exist, so it doesn't really matter if other teams try to get ahead of him. Alan decided that very soon he would be able to get everything he wanted. Alice said that he would follow the leader's decision. Alan thought for a moment, then asked if there was any other important information. But Alice said there was nothing new. Alan knew that his team was to the north, Balzac's group to the west, and the green maze to the east was empty. Alice explained that from what she had seen in the guild records, the guys from Volton were doing better in the middle tier. Alan replied that if that was the case, they didn't need to worry about others exploring the lower floors to the west or east. And that means you don't have to hurry. Alice agreed and added that there were other interesting things to do. Ark recalled how he met the beast girl Hatsu and then saved her from a scary monster. Ark was told that she was finally awake, which means she's already feeling better. Ark explained to Hatsu that they were currently in Volton City and had been taken in by merchant Gale last night. Gale said that at his home, the girl is not in any danger of the beast. It was a miracle that she had even escaped to that forest at night. Ark reminded him that he had given Hatsu a potion, and then she had passed out and he had brought her here. Hatsu was surprised and still a little scared and really didn't remember anything. She remembered seeing this particular guy in her dream. Hatsu thanked them for their help and said that she was feeling much better now. The girl was confused and did not understand how it happened that Mr. Ark was in the forest at the very moment when she was fleeing. Merchant Gale reminded him that he had only heard a little about the monster yesterday, and now he would like to hear more about what really happened. Hatsu explained that she lives in a village that is located to the south of the dungeon, and before, there were cases when monsters came to them. And usually, ordinary warriors and village mages were enough to deal with the problem of monsters. But this was something else yesterday. No one was able to resist this huge black creature. The merchant said it was bad if no one could protect the village. Ark asked what that monster looked like in general, and maybe there were several of them. Hatsu replied that she didn't know for sure, but it seemed to her that the monster was still alone. The girl also explained that she could not accurately describe the monster because she was very scared, and it was also quite dark around. But we can say for sure that the magic did not work on that monster at all. The monster seemed to disappear even before it was hit, and it all happened very quickly. Merchant Gale suggested that it must have been a magical defense. Gale explained that there was a powerful monster with hideous abilities, and around such a monster there is a certain wall that repels magic. Gale said that when neither the sword nor magic could defeat him, everyone fled, and it just so happens that he was helped when he became a target. And after a while, other people from neighboring villages took refuge in Volton. Hatsu exclaimed that it was urgent to find the rest of the villagers. Ark stopped the girl and said that she hadn't regained her strength yet and needed to rest. Hatsu protested and insisted that she was fine and that it was time for her to go. Merchant Gale asked the girl to take her time and wait a bit. Gale explained that Hatsu should change her clothes first because it was better not to go looking like that. Gale also offered the girl some food. Hatsu replied that she couldn't accept it because she already had a lot of help. The merchant said that if Hatsu didn't understand, he would say something completely different. Gale explained that it wasn't a good idea for a girl to come out of his house looking like that. After all, if it is seen, then terrible rumors will spread, and he will not be allowed to live in peace. Ark decided that he also needed to eat before deciding what to do next. Gale asked what was bothering the young adventurer, but Ark replied that it was fine, and he's very grateful that Gale let them stay and took care of them. As it turned out, the city was really flooded with refugees from the nearest villages who were fleeing from the monster's attack. Gale said that the number of monsters is growing, and there aren't enough soldiers to protect them. The commander ordered the soldiers to split up into groups and search the nearby villages in turn. He also ordered to check the presence of evacuated people and take care of their accommodation. Then he instructed them to deliver the letters to the fortress and use the fastest horses. The commander himself went to the guild to discuss everything. Hatsu saw her aunt in the crowd of refugees and was glad to see her. It turned out that it is not known how many residents remained alive, because many more were arriving and the number was constantly changing. Ark thought it was a good thing that Hatsu found her family. Merchant Gale asked where the young adventurer was going. Ark replied that he wanted to find this monster. Hatsu exclaimed that it was stupid and very dangerous. Ark explained that no one knows when the monster will attack again, but that it will happen for sure. Therefore, the only way out is to destroy the monster that destroys villages. The merchant asked why Ark was so confident in his abilities. Gale explained that if it was a powerful monster, then Ark probably wanted to kill it and devour it. But this is unlikely to be beneficial if the entire territory is in chaos. Hatsu suddenly stated that if Ark was going to kill a monster, then she wanted to participate as well. The brave girl promised that she would do everything she could and not become a problem.